Welcome to Delivering Miracles, a podcast to teach women like you tips and strategies on how you can have a safer pregnancy so you can bring home a healthy baby. I'm your host and your high-risk pregnancy expert, Parijat Deshpande. I can't wait to chat with you. When you're traveling constantly to fertility clinics, or you're lying on bed rest and you can't read very well, or you're sitting at the bedside in the NICU and you have to be super quiet, audiobooks are a fantastic way to spend the time. Peace is Every Step, the Path of Mindfulness in Everyday Life is amazing. And it's by one of my favorite authors who just knows exactly what to say when you're in the midst of anxiety and overwhelm and you just need to calm down. And you can check it out for free. For listeners of the Delivering Miracles podcast, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. Head over to audibletrial.com/deliveringmiracles and get your free audiobook plus a 30-day free trial today. You can grab Peace is Every Step or any other book that you want to download. That's audibletrial.com/deliveringmiracles. I can't wait to hear what you pick. Before we get started, I wanted to share something really exciting. For the first time ever, there's finally a book specifically for women with high-risk pregnancies and how to manage your stress so you can have a healthy pregnancy even if you've got complications. It's called Pregnancy Brain, and I'm really excited to share it with you. To learn more about the book, head over to pregnancybrainbook.com. That's pregnancybrainbook.com. I can't wait for you to check it out. When you're experiencing fertility challenges, when you've had a high-risk pregnancy, when you have delivered preterm, when you have experienced recurring pregnancy loss, those experiences on their own are tremendously challenging. They're heartbreaking. They're soul-crushing. They're so hard. But the challenges don't just stop there. You might end up having a child who has extra medical needs, especially if you delivered preterm or the child has some kind of health problems after delivery. But there's one more challenge even beyond that comes up and can really feel like a stab to your heart when you don't know what to do. And that challenge is knowing how to grow your family, how many kids to have, and when to walk away and stop. And the challenge particularly comes up when you feel like you don't have a say in how many children you can have. You might have a dream of wanting 2 children, 3, 4, 5, 17. I don't know, right? We all have these dreams and this vision of our future family. And then when it starts becoming a reality, you realize you have trouble getting pregnant. You have trouble staying pregnant. You have trouble having children your pregnancy make it to term. Whatever those challenges are, that dream of that future family starts to fade away. And that's really hard to wrap your head around, especially for something like this, right? Having a dream home, having a dream vacation, a dream car, those things, they're there. We have those dreams. And it's possible that some of those don't come true. But there's something about family building that just hits deeper, it cuts deeper, and it hurts more when those dreams can't be fulfilled, especially when you feel like it's not a choice. And there's so many different reasons why that can happen. For example, money, right? If you need to do fertility treatment to have children, or if you need to pursue surrogacy or adoption, and you don't have the funds because those options are expensive, that might prevent you from having the family that you wanted. Maybe your health is the reason that you can't carry another pregnancy, you can't go through fertility treatment. Maybe it's just mental exhaustion. I mean, I say just, but it's not just, it's huge, right? You've been through so much and you start to wonder, can I handle this? Can I go through this again? The ups and downs, the uncertainties, the worries. Maybe there's not enough help around for you to be able to do that. I'll tell you a little story about that for myself when we get there. But maybe you don't have enough help around. You don't have family. You don't have enough friends. You don't have enough community, something like that. Maybe there is a concern about the health of the baby. Maybe you have some kind of genetic condition that impacts your babies and you know that, and maybe that might impact your decision of going forward. There's so many factors. And the challenge becomes when you want more children, you really want them, but you don't know if it's possible because of some of these factors that feel out of your control. That's what we're talking about today. And we have one of my favorite people in the world on Delivering Miracles today to talk to us about that. Maria Rothenburger is amazing. She's a fertility therapist and coach, and she personally has been through this. When infertility reared its ugly head for her, she went a wee bit crazy and subsequently experienced spontaneous joy, which she feels would not have been possible without that infertility experience. And her doctoral research focuses on post-traumatic growth and infertility as opposed to PTSD due to that profound experience. And she's made it her life mission to help others achieve the same. And though her psychotherapy practice is still there, her passion has become fertility coaching, involving a four-pronged approach for movement toward optimal fertility. She's amazing. I love her. Welcome, Maria. I'm so glad you're here.
Hey, Parjat, thank you so much for that lovely introduction. You were too kind.
Oh, no, of course. I'm going to shout it through from the rooftops. Everybody needs to know Maria. She's amazing.
Very cool. Thank you.
So you have a wealth of knowledge about this. I know you have a lot to share. But before we get into that, can you tell us a little bit about your story and how you got into fertility coaching and the work that you do?
Of course. Absolutely. So like most of us that get into this field, we have some personal experience with it, whether it's ourselves or somebody else that we know of that's struggled with trying to conceive. And I'm no different. I went through the hell of trying to conceive, just like many of your listeners. And I think part of my growth, as you mentioned, my doctoral research, part of my growth process has been around paying my healing forward to other people. And so basically, my husband and I attempted to conceive for 6.5 years. And I went through a very deep depression and a lot of anxiety that I had never experienced before. I had marriage struggles, and eventually, and in fact, this sort of ties in, or very solidly ties into the topic today. Eventually, I decided that trying to conceive was not worth the pain. And we ended up actually for about 2 weeks deciding to be child-free before my husband said, I actually kind of want to, I think I want to be a dad. And so we ended up pursuing adoption. But that's my story in a nutshell. And certainly it's not highlighting any much of the pain that we went through. There's just a whole host of psychological, emotional, physical pain that one goes through with all this. And so I definitely chose this specialty within my field of counseling to be able to help those, because frankly, I don't know about you, but I knew that I needed to see a counselor, and I went through several tries before finding somebody who got it. And there aren't enough of us, frankly. There are more coming when I'm so happy. Oh, it's so hard.
I totally agree.
So I definitely knew there were more coming, which is wonderful, but I definitely knew I wanted to at least do that. And then, the post-traumatic growth piece is really important to me. And just for people who haven't heard of post-traumatic growth before, these are the things that happen in your life so if something terrible happens to you and you end up realizing, oh my God, actually, I'm a better person because of that in such and such ways, that's post-traumatic growth. So the reason why I got into coaching is because, I wish I could provide a visual here, but if you can just imagine a horizontal flat line, okay, this is where your baseline is. If you are going to a therapist or a counselor, it's probably because you're significantly below that baseline and you're trying to heal back up to baseline. For a coach, you're maybe just a little bit below that baseline, but still in the general area, and you're looking to be better than you used to be, or better than you are right now. You're just looking to function a little bit better. That's coaching. It's the same for like running. If I want to be a better runner, I go to a running coach, right? So it's the same thing. And that's what I really am a passionate person about, is growth.
Yes. And this is why we love each other so much, I think, because we're totally on the same wavelength about this. Let's take where we are and let's make us better. How do we get better?
Right. Using the strengths that you already have and maybe aren't recognizing as much.
Exactly.
So that's why I got into coaching, and that's why I'm really passionate about coaching process. I still do the therapy, but it's less of a passion now than the coaching is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Let's dive in, because this is a topic that affects so many people. I have lived through it. You've lived through it. It's a really hard question to answer. And let's start by just acknowledging that not everybody around you understands how hard this question is, because I know I heard so often, well, you have one.
Right.
If you can't have another, then why bother? You're fine. You have one. It's okay. And the question of, can we have more children? Should we have more children? How do we do that? It's actually so much deeper than the number of children that you have. So let's start there. How do you even approach this question when you have 0, you have 1, you have 2, doesn't matter. But how do you approach this question of, can we even have more? Should we have more?
Yeah. So you are absolutely 100% right. It matters not how many children you have, or if you have none, or if you have stepchildren. None of that matters. I think that there are 2 basic ways. First thing I need to acknowledge is, if you are thinking about this at all, if this is in your mind at all, this is a fantastic episode for you to help weigh out some of these options. The fact that you are even thinking about, does this need to end, is a sign. Okay, I need to really work through this. So the way that I see it, there are two grand ways, 2 large ways, sort of sections, if you will, to think about. So the one way that you can tell is when the negatives of trying to conceive outweigh the positives. The other way is when the positives of stopping outweigh the negatives. In other words, other parts of life become way more important than trying to conceive. Now, I should note that there's a lot of grief inherent in both of these, and we'll get into that a little bit later, but I just want to look at the first one. So let's say the negatives outweigh the positives. This happened actually with me. Here are some ways, some examples, and there are a myriad of ways. This is not a finite list. So you might notice that you've lost your joy and passion for having a baby and for growing your family. And instead, you feel really depressed and anxious, really unhappy. Now, one can feel depressed, anxious, and unhappy, but still have that passion for creating a family. They go hand in hand when you're looking at, okay, maybe it's time to stop. You could also have a general loss of zest for life. Just nothing is joyful. And that's likely a clinical depression, which I recommend getting thee to a therapist. Another way, a second way, is that your marriage might be really suffering. And you're looking at I know that my husband and I were knocking on divorce's door. It's that intense, that terrible.
And I hear from a lot of women and couples, they're right there with you. This happens so frequently. So if you're listening and you're feeling like you're the only one and why can't my marriage handle this? It really is not just you. It happens so often.
It does. And that might be a negative that far outweighs the positives of attempting to conceive. The third one, this one's a little bit more subtle, and you may not notice it. This actually happened with us when we were adopting our number 2. So you're talking the talk, but not walking the walk. And what I mean by that is, we really want to do this, but then you're not really following through, kind of complacent, avoiding next steps. Now, does that mean you're done? No, because we ended up adopting our second child, and that's a whole other story, a whole other podcast, but it doesn't mean you're done, but it's something to look at. Okay, maybe that's a little bit of a something to add to that column of maybe we should consider stopping. Another way is that you spend more time surfing the internet, reading pregnancy forums, really obsessing about trying to conceive rather than living life. There's other things besides trying to conceive, right? You might have some hobbies. A lot of people talk about, I miss who I used to be. A lot of clients that I work with talk about that. I miss who I used to be. I miss what I used to do. I don't even know who I am anymore.
That really resonates with me. That is totally how I felt when we knew that we were ready to be done. I didn't have anything outside of work and responsibilities. And that was it. And I'd completely lost myself. And when we thought about the other side of it, it was like,
yes.
Oh, there is life again. And this can be done. There was such a sense of relief when we imagine that really clued us into, okay,
and
I think
this one is actually quite insidious. Like it sort of creeps up on you. You don't realize that you've lost yourself until you realize you've lost yourself. It's like, oh, I'm not hanging out with these people anymore. I'm not painting anymore. I'm not reading anymore. I'm not gardening. I'm not whatever. I'm not being me anymore.
Yeah. And it's in all the very little ways. Like it hit me a while back when we realized, when was the last time we went to a movie theater?
Yeah.
It had been years. And we actually just went recently and we looked like complete idiots because we didn't know how to buy the tickets. Because apparently people buy them online now. We didn't know that. They have like seat numbers. We were like, what? What do you mean we pick our seats? It was completely ludicrous.
Yeah.
Like, okay, we need to get out more. This needs to happen again soon.
I know. Suddenly you step out into the quote real world and it's like, what just happened? Where did I go? But I've been on Dr. Google. That's where I've been. Yes. So that becomes, life as opposed to actual life where there's joy and curiosity and all these wonderful freedom feeling things that we miss out when we are hunkered over the internet or connecting with other people or obsessing about trying to get pregnant or grow our family. Another way, this is not an exhaustive list, as I said, but I do have a few written down, that when you realize that the way that you're living your life is not really in line with your personality, and this is sort of tied to the last one, your personality, your values, your belief system, you might notice not so good habits like drinking more alcohol or smoking more, or isolating from people, obsessing with lack thinking. I don't have enough. I never will have enough. I'm not worthy. It's not worth it. It's not all this lack thinking. You stop planning all things like vacations and time away from family or friends or with family or friends. You just stop all that. Just life stops. And you realize that's not in line with who I am or my beliefs or my values. That might be something to add into that column of maybe it's time to look at something else. You realize, this is also similar, that the goals that you have for moving forward with building your family and the process of achieving those goals, which can be quite daunting, doesn't resonate with you anymore. And that's actually where I was. I realized nothing is as important as my marriage and my zest for life. I tend to be one of those rose-colored glasses kind of person, like very, optimistic and happy and joyful. And I usually see all the good, really, in my life. And I definitely was not there. And I realized that the way that I was living my life did not resonate with who I really was. So this is kind of a big deal. This isn't just something little. This is a really big awareness and a reality of that contrast between who you really are and where and what you're feeling and how you're living your life in that moment. Here's a big one: resentment of the time and the energy and the whole, I'm just thinking back to my own process of how it just sucked me dry of energy, how to get pregnant, and constantly looking at new things and new ways and what doc can I talk to? And what if I have this pain here and that pain there? What does that mean? Am I not pregnant? Am I pregnant? Oh my goodness. It's soul sucking. Oh, horrible.
It's exhausting.
Yeah. And then the resentment comes in, right? Like, why me? Why us? Why does it have to be, right?
And then you start getting really resentful towards other people. When you walk around, you see pregnant women everywhere and you're like, you have it so easy and all of that, which feels awful to feel. It's not a judgment if you feel that way, but be honest with yourself. It doesn't feel good to feel that way, right?
It feels terrible. It feels horrible. And so here's what I would try to do. I would look at a pregnant person and say, what if she had trouble too? I mean, like, I don't know, but that began to not work. That began to not work too. I just feel like I don't
exactly.
It still worked for her,
It still worked for her. She's still pregnant. Exactly. I would get that way seeing pregnant women standing up because I was pregnant. And I couldn't stand. And I'd see them standing in line somewhere and I'd be like, oh, you can stand. Yeah. And it was and it lasted even after my son was born and after he came home, but it really stays with you if you don't do something to release it properly.
That's right. Yeah. And so when that stays with you and it becomes not worth it to try to work on that while also trying to conceive, that might be another like, okay, maybe I need to look at being done. A couple other, the last things that I have written down are a loss of creativity or curiosity around building family stuff. So like now, and I don't mean the obsession around it. I mean like, how can we make this happen? Maybe we can foster, or maybe we can use donor embryo, or maybe we can, there's a lack of curiosity, or even, I don't want to use the word research, but it's like an openness, a lack of an openness. Hey, what can happen here? I'm just opening up here to the universe's possibilities, like show me what's next, universe. There's a loss of that. It's a much more closed off feeling, a wall put up like this blows and I don't want to do it anymore. And those might not be the words that one would use, but the feeling is there. Just, I'm done. It's over. A wall is totally up. I just don't want to go there. I don't have the energy or the desire.
And it really relates with what you said earlier about how when you're looking at what the options are, they just don't feel good anymore. So it really, I think those two go really well hand in hand, as you just don't have the desire to keep looking. And when you do kind of peek and go, what might be there? And you just go, ugh, no thanks. I just can't. I just don't want to. I think that for me especially really, really resonates and hits home.
Yep. Never mind. Don't want to do that. You can actually, if you're really good at body sensing, you can feel it in your body. What resonates with you?
Yes.
That heavy, sick, sort of dark feeling is no-go, not going there. And a sort of lightness and happiness around it. Maybe not happiness, maybe more calm. I'll just even call it neutral or calm. That's maybe something that you want to move toward. But yeah, when there's that big just wall up and just a darkness around it, that might also be a sign that you're kind of over this. The last thing, and not a lot of people talk about this, which is really, it's really interesting. I find talking about it with clients even, they get sort of a shame feeling around it, a dread around getting pregnant. There's just a feeling of dread. What if I get pregnant? What if we actually have this baby? It's interesting how few people talk about that, because they're really trying, and you get this sense, I really want to have a baby. I really want to have a baby. But inside, there's a little twinge that's like, ugh, I don't want to do this. Now, I actually had a little piece of that. And this is probably why I noticed this with my own clients. And I ask about it, because I personally did not love the idea of being pregnant. For me, it was a means to an end. And that was a point for me where I'm like, maybe there's a better avenue for me to build my family, because I think that I'm like unconsciously blocking this thing from happening, Yeah.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you brought this up, because you're right. We don't talk about it. There's such a sense of judgment that if you have trouble having children, you should be grateful for every single moment of it. And if you get pregnant, you should be totally grateful, and you should always be happy and positive about that possibility. And that's just not true. That is not real. And people who are saying that to you, if you're listening and you're like, yeah, I've heard that before, they don't understand. That's coming from a place of ignorance, because that's not the reality. And you know that because it doesn't feel good.
Right. And most people tell it to themselves. I should be happy now that I'm pregnant. I should be grateful. I shouldn't complain. People should all over themselves all the time. So I definitely want to put that out there. There are no shoulds here. There are absolutely no shoulds. Even if you absolutely feel blissful at the thought of being pregnant, and then you achieve pregnancy and it's not going the way that you want it to, as Parjat, you well know, it's okay to be like, well, this sucks, and I'm not okay with this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's good to acknowledge that for your health, for your baby's health. It's really good to be able to say, this blows. This is not what I wanted. This is not how it was supposed to go.
It really is. No, I'm not supposed to have any negative thoughts. That's not true.
That's why we're here. We listen to those negative thoughts all the time, and we accept them.
The acceptance piece, that's a great word. Acceptance, that is the piece that is super healthy for your pregnancy or for your trying to conceive journey or moving forward in anything in your life, that acceptance around it, that generates a healthy response in your body. So if you acknowledge, I'm having dread about this, that's okay. Acknowledge it. Be cool with it. Yep, that's happening. There's no need to change it. You're just accepting it. Yeah.
Absolutely. I love that. You've gone over so many different options and so many signals that I think anybody that's listening is going to resonate with at least one of them. I know several of them have really hit home for me. So, okay, so we have listeners who are listening in and they're going, yeah, number 3, number 4, this one totally hits home. Then what? Because recognizing it is one thing, and then actually making the decision to say, I'm done is so different. And it just feels heavy and it feels hard and it feels like I don't want to. How do you overcome that?
Well, so this ties into the next piece, which is when the positives of stopping outweigh the negatives, really looking at both sides of this. Okay, do I really want to make this choice? And I want to highlight that phrase, like big time, bold, neon colors, making this choice.
Yes. Yeah. I love it.
This is so much of the fertility community is bogged down in victimhood, right? Like, why is this stuff happening to me? And I'm not saying that's a terrible thing. I'm saying take your friggin' power back. Take your power back.
Exactly. Yes. Absolutely. Acknowledge that it's not going great. It's not what you wanted. These are not the choices you wanted.
Yeah.
But you do.
Yeah. And it's like anything, I was just listening to a podcast yesterday where I started cracking up because I've always had this thought that when I am driving and there is a little old lady that cuts in front of me and drives like 20 miles under the speed limit, like, okay, this is the universe's way of telling me that I need to slow down. And I'm going to choose to chill out right now because it's a choice. I can get mad. I can roll down the window. I can like honk and like shout expletives out the window. I'm not choosing to do that, right? I'm choosing to like chill out. No matter what circumstance comes your way. I'm not saying that you chose pregnancy struggles or infertility or any struggle in your life. I'm not saying you chose that. I'm saying you get to choose what to do with that. So if you're able to, if you've noticed this first list, any of these things resonate with you, next thing is to really look at, are there positives to stopping trying to conceive that outweigh any of the negatives? And the negatives of stopping trying, of course, is not building your family, et cetera, right? So I remember when my husband and I, he went along with it because we were in a space of like, we're just sort of symbiotic and like going with each other's flow. But he definitely still had a feeling of, I want to be a dad. But for those couple of weeks, he was like, yeah, I'm totally on board with that. My ideas and my thoughts about the positives of stopping totally outweighed the negatives of stopping. I thought about travel, about saving money, going to child-free events, the freedom around not having to parent. For me, having like 20 dogs would be amazing. So I dreamt about that.
I love that. Tell me that's still happening.
No. I have to tell you, I mean, I don't care what anybody says. Dogs are still like children. They are still absolutely like children.
Know.
So in my head, we have 2 canines and 2 human children. That's how it is. But in my head, without having human children, 20 dogs would have been perfectly reasonable. I don't know. I was just excited to dream about it.
But that word freedom is totally encapsulates that feeling of just, I'm out of this cage and I have all this space to dream about these things.
Yeah, that ultimate release and that ultimate just calm and peace around it. It just feels so much better. Other things we dreamt about are, like how to build our career, like think about building our careers and art and leisure, hobbies, having a better marriage, for goodness sake. That was so rough for us. Having a better marriage, really focusing hardcore on our nieces and nephews, like spoiling the heck out of them. So these are all things to us that were way more important than trying to build our own family. And none of those might be more important to you.
And that's fine. There are a whole host of other things too. This is, again, not a finite list. But I want to, there's a wonderful poet, Anais Nin, her name is, I quote her often, and I should probably look up the exact quote. But here's the loose sort of paraphrase of part of this particular poem. It goes something like this. And the time came when remaining tight in the bud was more painful than blooming. So,
oh, I just got chills.
Yeah. So
I just got chills. That's exactly it.
That's how you know. It's just more painful than the scariness of moving forward, because it is scary. It is scary to say, I release this, I'm done with this, I'm over it. And that's where we get into the next thing with, to answer your question from like 5 hours ago, sorry. How do you move through this? Now, I said in the very beginning of today that grief is inherent in both of these. And it's really important that you recognize what is happening to you when you make this choice. When you say, okay, I am consciously choosing to not try to build our family anymore. And, anybody can Google the 5 stages of grief. It's super, super simple. Google it up now. But very quickly, usually there's a beginning piece of like shock, like, oh my gosh, is this really our new life? And then you go through these various other stages. So denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and then ultimately acceptance, ultimately. So it's really important. And P.S., that's not linear. You can go back and forth between all of those stages. Even if you've accepted the situation, you can still go back to depression. You can still go back to anger. You can still go back. It's fine. You will ultimately land on acceptance. This is also not to say that for the rest of your life, you're going to be totally fine and peaceful and calm. No, there's going to be a balance of both, likely. So most of your life will be around peace and acceptance and joy, and you will have yourself back again. And then there will be moments of triggers. Actually, I wrote about this in a blog once. I was at an event for a neighbor, and there were several people there, and I happened to be talking to 2 couples. This was really interesting. This was in the middle of our trying to conceive journey, and I was really sort of depressed and anxious and stuff. And the topic kids came up, as social, things tend to do. But I never heard them. I had met these 2 couples before. I had never heard them talking about kids. So I don't remember how the topic of kids came up. It wasn't about any of us, but they said, both of these couples said that they didn't have kids, that they had tried for a long time, and they made a decision not to try anymore. It just wasn't worth it. And then I have to tell you, just the glee and the sparkle in their eyes when they talked about all the things that they'd been able to create in their lives because they didn't have kids was inspiring to me. And I think it really started my journey to post-traumatic growth, because I saw that it was possible. I saw that we could have joy, that we could have a connection with life again that was not present for a long, long time. So
absolutely. And what I hear from that story that you shared and what you've been saying so far is it's not that you're trying to fill a void. You're acknowledging that you don't have one more child or any children or what the number of children you wanted. That's there, but you can also choose to grow your life in other ways now that you've made the choice to stop growing your family. And I think there's something really powerful in that the goal is not to make that pain go away and just ignore it and say, well, just be happy with what you have. No, that's not at all the point. The point is you acknowledge what's missing. You acknowledge the grief. You allow yourself to have those moments, and you will when you're feeling your heartbreak again because you wished you had one more child or any children or whatever your situation is.
That's right.
But that doesn't have to stop you from growing the rest of your life outside of that.
That
too.
is correct. And sometimes
I love that.
That pain and that grief is the impetus for seeing all the joy, for finding that gratefulness, so I definitely talk about giving that pain a hug, like just sitting with it and being like, yeah, this blows. Yep, it blows. And then eventually it moves on, as all emotions do. They're all transient. And then you're able to say, because of that, I can now feel the contrast of the joy in my life. And then you're fully present in that.
Absolutely.
That's really what happened actually in the middle of our trying to conceive journey. When I personally experienced a shift, we were about 5.5 years in, and it just became not worth it anymore. We still had a couple of embryos frozen, and I was definitely not anywhere near ready or open to trying again. But I began about a year-long journey of healing our marriage and healing me and being cool with what is. And I came out of it on the other side totally peaceful and blissful and chill about what to do next. I didn't have to have a plan. I didn't have to have an agenda. I was not on Dr. Google. I was not doing any of that. I was meditating. I was peaceful. I was cool with whatever came my way. And so when my husband came to me and said, I really think that I want to be a dad, even though a couple weeks prior we had decided emphatically, we're done. We're done. I said, I'm cool with that too, man. I'm zen. It's zen. All right. We're just looking at what's next, man. Whatever. I'm all up in here. And
love it.
Yeah. I have to tell you, that is how I have run my life since then. And this is why I call my business Miracles Happen, because miracles have friggin' happened over and over.
Absolutely.
Just by virtue of saying, I am cool with what is, and I am open to and curious about and wondering about what's coming our way.
Yes.
Right.
So I know we probably have some listeners listening in right now, and they go, man, that sounds amazing. I want to do that, but no, I really want this. And I really want this one particular thing. I really want to keep trying. I really want to have 4 children. I can't be open to this stuff. I can't, if I let go, it won't happen.
Right. Right.
What do you say to
Well,
that?
so 2 things. Letting go is not giving up. Ever. Ever, ever, ever. That does not.
Yes.
And if you are thinking to yourself right now, no, absolutely not, I'm not there, then you're not ready to stop. That's all. You're not ready to stop. The negatives have not outweighed the positives of conceiving, trying to conceive, or build your family in whatever way, adoption or whatever. And the positives of stopping have not outweighed the negatives. And that's perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine. Again, though, if you have realized, oh crap, yep, the negatives outweigh the positives, and the positives of stopping totally outweigh the negatives, then it might be time to look at working through that grief process. And sometimes it's not this very clear-cut decision. Okay, done. We're not doing this anymore. It's not in 1 second I've made this decision. Sometimes it's a process. Sometimes it's like, okay, I need to create some space around me, literal space and figurative space. So like taking a break for a month or 2 or 3, or for me, it was a year. And I know people out there are cringing because, we are told that eggs get old and age matters. And when you're 29, it's done, or that's an exaggeration. I think we're told 35, but
that's how it feels.
How it feels. If you don't have a baby when you're 12, then that's it. It's over. No, we're like, the fear of God is put into us, right? Like there's this desperation around it that is created by, the medical community. And I know that after reading your book that you agree with this, so I can say it on your podcast, but there's like such fear put in us around that. And I'm here to tell you that you create far more fertility in your body when you are calm and chill about things than you would ever create when you're desperate. So
absolutely. And that trumps age.
Totally trumps that age. Absolutely. Yes. And so when you are thinking to yourself, no, I can't do that. Check yourself and see if it's coming from that desperate place. If you are coming from that desperate place, please take some time to create some space around you and some silence and some peace around you to really tune into that inner part of you that knows what to do next. Because you already know. You do. It's just the brain gets in the way a little bit. Our thoughts get in the way a little bit.
So true. For me, this physical space had to happen. The moment that I felt like I could actually make the decision to stop, I was literally on a walk in the middle of the woods, but there weren't trees really near me, but I was so disconnected from my house. My phone didn't even work there. Wasn't getting service there. It was just, I needed to turn it off.
Perfect.
And it was the only way that I could actually hear my body. And for those of you that are listening that know, I've been listening to Delivering Miracles, you know, I'm all about listening to your body. If you've read Pregnancy Brain, you know about that too. That was the only way because like you said, my brain was getting in the way. I just kept going, but.
Right.
And I just couldn't focus.
Right.
I couldn't hear it. I couldn't hear the intuition and those instincts and what my body was saying.
Right.
Over all of that.
Right. And all of us have resonate that. I resonate with that. I think, we're list making, color coordinating, step 1, step 2, step 3 kind of people.
Totally.
Very big go-getters, right? Like that's what we do. And that's brain work, which is fine. And it's totally a plus. Right. But with this, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And so getting into that, and this is what I really, really mean. And I want to drive home. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. Letting go
I was just going to
is
say that. Yeah.
Yes. We're on the same brain wavelength all the time. Oh, we are on the same wavelength. So, or maybe it's not a brain wavelength. Maybe it's just, I don't know, an energy field or something. I don't know. But
right.
When you are able to really harness or tune into what the vibe of your body is saying, you will know. It's like I've worked with so many people who are like, well, I can't drink this and I can't exercise and I can't. Everything is can't. There's so much lack thinking in this field.
Absolutely.
That's so hard. Gosh, we are surrounded by abundance. If you listen to your body and your body's like, you know what, a cup of coffee sounds phenomenal right now. and then you have that cup of coffee and you don't beat yourself up. And likely that overall improves your fertility. So now I'm not saying to drink a bottle of wine every night. It's likely not okay.
Right.
But really pay attention to what your body is saying.
Yeah. And I like what you're pointing out is that in the midst of all these, don't do this, don't do that, and all these checklists and all these things that you're reading about what you're not able to do and what you can't do and what your body can't do and all of that, is to find what you can do, even if it's one thing.
That's
what is
correct.
that one thing that you can do? And I got to tell you just personally, it is so freeing to think that way.
Yes.
Because you suddenly stop feeling like the walls are closing in on you.
That's right.
And you finally find that door to escape that room. That is amazing.
That sort of goes right in, or it does go right into the next thing that I was going to say is that sometimes when people look at these things that I'm talking about of how I know that I'm done, you realize, oh, I'm not done. And I want to add in all these joyful things. And because I'm now chill about it, it doesn't feel overwhelming. Now I'm having fun and building my family. And I can do that. There are no more can'ts. There are no more any of that. It's, I can do that. I've created this space around that is calm. Okay. This isn't, I'm done trying to conceive or trying to build my family. This is, I need more fun in my life. I need more joy. I need more peace. I need more calm. That's another avenue that you can take when you're having all of these thoughts.
Absolutely. And that leads into my next question, which is we tend to, I know I did, and I know a lot of our listeners do, we tend to beat ourselves up for that I'm going to withhold that joy or giving myself some pleasure of some kind because I can't do this. My body can't do this. Or we don't have enough money. I don't have enough. I'm not bringing enough income to allow us to do this. And we come up with all these scenarios that are very real, right? That are real, but we use them to withhold that pleasure and that joy. And we start taking on that responsibility. This is my fault that we can't have this family. What do you say to our listeners who are thinking that right now?
Stop it.
Done. Maria said it. All right, finished.
Oh my God. It's so hard to hear it still after all these years working with people. And I know I did it myself. We absolutely are our worst critics. And what I say to you is if your ultimate goal is to improve your fertility, you need to start creating the chemicals out of your brain that support that. And when you beat yourself up, you're emitting all the neurotransmitters that match, I suck, I'm not good enough, I'm lack, shut down my ovaries, screw up my uterus. You're sending your body all of those messages from thought alone. So if you really want to create optimal fertility, it's really important to realize, oh crap, I'm beating myself up again. That's okay. That's what my brain does. I'm going to give myself a hug and I'm going to move on. Instead of getting on that thought train, oh my God, I'm beating myself up. Oh my God, I shouldn't be doing that. No, my fertility is bad. Now this suck is going to fail. Oh my God, I failed at life. I should just not be here.
Sounds very familiar.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to acknowledge for our listeners that it's hard not to go there because you want to blame something, but blaming yourself is actually getting in the way of what you actually want.
It absolutely is. Physically.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And so it's absolutely hard. Here's what I say to, and I probably said this to you a million times too, like you have proven that you can do hard things. Yes, this is hard, and you can do hard things. So what you're trying to do here is retrain your brain. That means growing some new synaptic connections. That's going to take time. So that means when you beat yourself up, that you acknowledge, I'm beating myself up. That's okay. That's what I've taught my brain to do. And I'm retraining it right now. That's all. Just by the act of saying that's okay, you are sending out new neurotransmitters, growing new synaptic connections, and you are improving your fertility just by that. Over and over and over and over and over again, you create new patterns in your brain.
Absolutely. I love this. And the real take-home message for everybody that's listening, letting go doesn't mean giving up. Letting go does not mean giving up. You have choices. Even when it feels like you don't, you have choices and you can make them.
That's right.
Maria, what are your final words of hope for women and couples who are listening in right now and are grappling with this decision of should we keep trying or are we done?
I really encourage people to pay intention. That means be intentional about listening to yourself and trusting you because you already know. You already know what to do next. You only need to tune into it. And it's not as complicated as you might think. So listen to you and trust you.
It's beautiful. That's beautiful. I love that. And I mean, I could talk to you for hours.
Right?
But,
me too.
And I want other people to do the same too. So where can people find you?
Oh gosh, you can find me all over the place. My website is drmariarothenberger.com. Burger. You can see me on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. Shoot me an email. I love getting emails, and I just got a few today that I will be answering. And I just love connecting with people and helping. That's my main goal here. So, and I have a book coming out next year. Again, congratulations again to you on your book.
Thank you.
In fact,
so excited for yours too.
I know, thanks. In fact, one of the chapters is called "Letting Go Isn't Giving Up." So
yes!
The whole chapter on that.
Of course there is. I mean, of course there had to be.
Right. Naturally.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. You were amazing. We have so much more I know we could cover, but this was incredibly helpful. And I know our listeners have taken away so much from your wisdom and your advice on a really challenging part of their journey. So thank you so much for being here, Maria.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for the invite.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, I love talking to her. And you can see why, right? The advice is so practical. It's so compassionate, which I know if you're anything like me, compassion is very hard. Self-compassion is very hard. We might be very compassionate to other people, but self-compassion is very hard. And it's a very practical advice for a decision that is very personal and is very emotionally charged. And there's no right answer, right? But approaching it gently, approaching it with an open mind and with curiosity can make such a difference in your experience of whatever next step lies ahead for you. Letting go is not giving up. You've heard me say that on this podcast all the time. And now Maria's come and said the same thing too. It's not the same. You have choices. Even when it feels like you don't, you do have choices and you're allowed to make them. Thank you so much for joining me here today. And if you enjoyed today's episode as much as I did, I would love it if you can head over to Apple Podcasts by iTunes and leave a review so more women who are going through this experience of deciding how their family is going to look and how to get there can tune into Delivering Miracles and receive this advice and inspiration and tips on how to build a family when it's not easy to do so. Also, if you haven't checked it out yet, I would love for you to check out my new book, Pregnancy Brain, which is all about the mind-body connection on how to manage your stress and your pregnancy complications, especially if you're having a high-risk pregnancy. So you can learn more about that and grab the book on Kindle or paperback at pregnancybrainbook.com. And I would love to stay in touch. So follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, and Facebook at Parijatdesh, Parijatdesh. Follow me there and come by and say hi. I would love to meet you. Family building is not easy for everybody. It's just not. And when you deviate from what seems like the perfect path, it can feel like you're completely alone and you have no choices. And it's hard. It is heartbreaking to not have the family that you had always dreamt of, or to not have it the way that you had always dreamt of. Allow yourself to feel that, accept that, and know that whatever choice you make, it is the right choice for you and your family. Take it one day, one step at a time. You can do this.